How's everybody doing? Good. Great. All right, sorry. Let's go. I'm good. It was fun.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
When we talked with James before you guys started spring practice, he mentioned when you were hired, one of the first people he thought about was CJ, and it seems like you two have gotten well acquainted very quickly here. What about his skill set, when maybe you look at some other guys that you've had in defenses in the past, makes him so unique and someone that you couldn't wait to maybe work with?
Yeah. He's a tremendous guy, just the energy and the excitement, and he's always trying to please, he's really eager to learn everything. Skill set wise, he's really unique, like he can play off the ball, he can play on the ball. He does a good job of transitioning his vision. Sometimes when you go behind the line of scrimmage, you got to adjust your vision, but he does that very well. And then just, I would say, his explosive power. When you watch him, obviously pass rush, and he can have some great skill pass rushing on the edge. But even in the run game, just that explosive pop that he can have. Some of the other type of like hybrid, like outside linebacker defensive ends that I've coached in the past, similar type of skill set, similar type of body frame, things like that. And that's good, because you can use them in unique ways and in different ways, and hopefully cause the offense a little bit of, confusion when you do that with those guys. So I see a lot of similarities.
Deep right, Jeremy Birmingham, Kings of the North.
Matt, when Kerry came back from the NFL a couple of years ago, Kerry Combs, when he returned, he said that the biggest adjustment that he had to make was realizing that in the offseason before he was watching 30-year-old men practice football, and now he's evaluating 14-year-olds trying to learn the game. How do you find a balance there as a guy who's watched NFL football for 25 years? How do you find it in yourself to not be too critical and like to get to the point where you're actually like a recruit? How do you get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think you nailed it. When we are at that other level, we are very critical of all of it, because there's enough body of work. You can go through and dive in not only the skill set, but then, you're trying to look at football intelligence and kind of, what they've learned and how they've grown and matured. I think looking at younger players and younger kids now, you're really just looking at what are the physical attributes that they have, and then just understand the fact that, you have to teach them a lot of the game too, which is fine, and you're going to teach them different things that you want them to do. So just really looking at, some of the raw talent, I think has been pretty awesome, and obviously really just for myself, it's been a while since I've watched that level of football, just how good it's gotten. You have a vision of what it looked like 25 years ago, and I know we're all kind of, we live our glory days back then too, but the kids are way better now than we ever were. So it's cool to kind of watch them all that, and you're trying to really project, like what do you see them being able to do, framework, how big are they going to get, sometimes they're actually going to increase their speed, their strength, their power, their explosiveness. I always like to look at little things, whether it's knee bend or ankle flex, that's a big one too, just how flexible guys' ankles are, their ability to bend, keep their knees over the toes, move, break, transition, hip fluidity, back and forth. So just really try to look at the raw talent of it. And then, you can coach the other things as far as, the finish, like how are they finishing on the plays, whether it's a DB through the pocket, ball skills. Some guys are more natural when they go up and play the ball in space. So just trying to evaluate that and then, figure out where they're going to go as they do mature and get older and figure out the positions that they then can help you with.
Third row left, Andy Anders, 11 Warriors.
Saw Malik Hartford working with the little bit of spring practice we got to watch, and just what have you seen from him and what stands out about his skill set there at the safety position?
Yeah, I think he's had a great spring. I mean, really go back to the weight room, and what was great was when I came in, I had an opportunity to watch him work with Coach Mick and his program and how they work. So I'm really looking at their body movement, how do they move, how are their hips, and then obviously we know, position in the back end, what do we think he can do, and how do we think he would be going backwards in some situations and things like that. So I think he's done a really good job of being consistent every day, training his body. He's improved a lot. His movement has improved. His strength has improved. And, he's just a student of the game. He's in here all the time studying and learning. I really like right now, I think that there is some flexibility for him to be able to play down, play back, has great range kind of in that back end too, which is really good. And now just maybe a little bit of eye control and teaching where he's reading and kind of being able to see through the uncovered lineman back into the quarterback and kind of have maybe a little bit of a football instincts and be able to jump, some of the things that he sees back there to, go play those plays faster. But his work and his consistency with the way that he approaches it, it's really been awesome. Like he's done a great job.
Right next door, Jeff Gilbert, Press Pros.
Coach, D-line, a lot of new guys this year. Coach Ryan was just in here talking, and he's talked for the past year, 16 games, depth. Is this line going to get deep? Is there going to be depth to it, or is it going to be halfway through the season before you even realize, do we have the depth we need? How are you seeing that?
Yeah, that's a good question too. With just obviously my newness to the the college schedule, but I'm used to kind of those 16-game seasons, and the longer seasons. So I do think that depth is critical, and just finding out exactly what roles those guys can play within the defensive line. So having some flexibility to be able to move guys around, and even when another guy comes in, understanding what his skill set is, and maybe that changes something structurally, that you do to be able to try to fit what his skill set is a little bit better, so that you can pull off some of those reps off the other guys to, have better longevity through the season. So I think that's really important. I think it's important early. I think it's important now too, to see that what they can do, so we can figure out what they do well, and then make sure they're in those positions. I think you can have depth, but sometimes if you get guys out of position, they might be a good player, but if they're not in the right position, then it doesn't look as good. And I think that's our job as coaches, to try to figure that out, exactly what that is, so that when we do get in midway through the season and we need different guys in different spots, we're like, no, remember, this guy's really good here. Let's structurally maybe do this instead this week, or, for this game, or whatever it might be, so that we do continually have that depth.
Over to the right, Adam King, WBNS.
Every coach has a different process of how they kind of work their way into a new place. What has it been like for you? How have you approached meeting these guys, implementing who you are as a defensive coordinator?
Yeah. It's obviously awesome just to be able to come here. I have such respect for Ohio State and obviously a great year last year, and Coach Day and the program and the culture that he's built. I'm a big fan, been a big fan for a long time. We come here all the time when you're at the next level and you're grabbing a lot of really good players out of this school, so you're very familiar with that. I think for me, I'm just, like I said maybe before, I'm just excited. I just want to teach and I want to mentor, but really right now I've got to learn. I got to listen. I've got to learn. I got to try to, understand what all the great coaches that are here, what they're doing fundamentally, and then things that we did last year structurally that are really good, and implement all that as we go forward, and just try to do the best job I can to teach. I think that's my job right now, is that with what we're doing, and when I see it, be able to teach it and get it across to the players and the coaches. But, right now I feel like I'm the student. I'm just kind of learning and trying to take in as much as I can. And then really trying to learn the kids, trying to learn, their backgrounds and where they're from, and what do they want. I think that's really important, so that I can be that mentor and that teacher and help them, along whatever path that is for them, and constantly try to encourage them to, to do all that stuff that they have to do every day and be consistent with it.
Deep right, Nick Walker, Letterman Row.
Matt, this is the first time we've talked to you since the contact period opened up for where you can't get into specifics with guys, but what's it been like to actually meet with recruits, have them on campus, get to kind of shake their hands, and what have you taken away from that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a little while for me on that deal. So it's really cool. The whole thing is completely changed, right? I think there's so much coming at these guys so fast. I kind of feel for them sometimes, and I think for me, my approach is just, I'm trying to be as direct as I can and as honest with them as I can, and, just help them evaluate what I see and how do they get better, and then, visions for us going forward and how we would be able to implement that. But I really do enjoy sitting down, right now in the initial phases. I think a lot of them, because they have been, they've been recruited by Ohio State for a while. So a lot of that process is just getting to know my story a little bit and getting to know me. But at the same time, understanding and learning the player and learning the kid and what he's been through, and what kind of his journey a little bit is important, in the family and all of that. And it's just kind of building that relationship. I think that's the coolest part right now. And again, college is great, mentoring young men, but then to then project that into the high school level. Like I said, my parents were teachers, and my dad, he did that a lot too. So just trying to keep his voice in my head a little bit, and understanding these are young kids, and really, again, like I said, there's just a lot coming at them, I think. So listening is really important, and then, just building that relationship with them.
Jimmy Watkins, Cleveland.com.
Matt, the layman might see a guy with your NFL resume jump into college and say, well, that's a backward career move. Why don't you see it that way?
Yeah. I really don't. I'm very blessed for my NFL career. I was really, really lucky. I've coached great players. I had a lot of fun, but I think, like I mentioned before, I think I started off as a college coach. I think that was where people really impacted me as a young man. And I think as a coach, we want to teach, we want to mentor, and that's what we want to do. And, this is a great opportunity for me to get back to that. I think that's really important right now, just to teach the game. And I know I can help them. I know I can help the kids, and if they want to go to the next level, I can give them a lot of good advice. But, I mean, it's Ohio State. This is the top. So, I mean, I'm pretty lucky to be here. And, again, it's a great game. The kids are great. So I think of it as just a great opportunity to go coach, and that's really what I want to do.
Joe Reedy, Associated Press.
Matt, you've got experience with New England of winning a championship, but then 2 months later quickly having to go back to work. Just with spring ball here, what's the biggest thing, just knowing it's a long season and being back in that short amount of time?
Yeah, I would say that's a really good point. I would say in my previous experience, I think one of the biggest things to try to always get everybody to understand is the urgency which you need to come back at. And we would always say it, we're just behind. We're behind everybody else. Everybody else got a jump start. Everybody's a little bit further ahead, and just try to create that urgency of what's happening right now for, our team. Like, we've got to really, be intentional about everything we do. We've got to have great urgency. We've got to rest. We've got to recover. We've got to do everything from, the body, but just that mindset of like, it's going to happen fast. Like, the offseason is going to be shorter. We're going to be back in it before you know it. And, we can't make up that time. So how do we, if we have the mentality a little bit like we're behind everybody else, how do we catch up? What do we do? And that's that consistency and that urgency, I think, is a big part of it. And, I always tell the guys too, when you reach the top of that mountain, and this, Ohio State's always had a big target, but like there's a huge target on who you are, and everybody now is going to spend the offseason studying every facet of what you do. So you have 6 months, that team is going to be studying you during the offseason. So even if you don't play that team till middle of the season, okay, we've got 4 days to get ready for them. They've spent 6 months getting ready for us. So that urgency has to go up to understand, like, we've got to catch up to where they are kind of in the reverse study.
Austin Ward, podcast.
Matt, you were talking going into camp about the multiplicity of the schemes and how you can adapt over time. How much of that relies on the nickel position, and how many guys could you consider on this roster to play that?
Yeah. I think multiplicity comes in a couple different ways. Nickel is huge, big nickel. If you have some of those body types, safety position in my past, has always been one of those positions that's been fun to kind of move around and put in different spots, especially when you have guys with a big skill range that play that position, because I think it makes it really hard for the offense, kind of what exactly is the defense in right now and what can they do out of it. So I do like the flexibility of the nickel and the big nickel position. I think the linebackers are really, critical in that too. Guys that can play on the ball, off the ball, and get into different structures that way is fun, to kind of put pressure on the offense. I think, here, the defensive backs just specifically, you're talking about the nickel, like it's a great room. There's a lot of depth there. So in that situation, I'm like, okay, let's get as many guys as we can in different roles to be able to go out there and play and keep it moving on the offense, try to make them figure out like, hey, somebody else is coming in. Is this a different package? Is it a different structure? Like, is this going to be something new? I'm not really sure what this looks like, and hopefully we stay ahead of them before they figure it out. But I think the room's great. Tim, they do a great job. Matt, they do a great job back there of training those guys and bringing them in. And, they're big, they're long, they can run. I mean, if you like defensive football, those guys are great to watch back there. It's fun.
And time, just a couple more. Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
You're coming from the NFL, so your perspective is probably skewed a little bit, coaching college players, and this team lost all but 3 starters.
Yeah.
I mean, how much do you have a feel for how good this defense can be, and what its identity can be, or is it just too early?
Yeah. Man, I would hate to just do that too early, because wasn't here last year for that, and I have great players that are obviously headed to the next level. But we have great young men here right now, and what I can speak on is just the work ethic, the drive, the consistency to come in every day and try to get better. That's phenomenal. Like these guys are they're working their butts off right now to try to get out there and be successful and be consistent and keep the standard and all of that. So. The on-field performance, sometimes I got to wait right now because I didn't really see it last year until we get to the games. But as far as the work ethic and the toughness and the the mental part of it, like it's really impressive, really impressive.
Coach, thank you very much.
Yeah,
You gotta
appreciate it.
recruits.
Good to see everybody. Yeah.
Coach